SC Media and our sponsor, Fortinet, are proud to present this month's CISO Stories program. Hosted by yours truly, Jess Hoffman, this is the show where CISOs share tales from the trenches and unpack leadership lessons learned along the way. Find this month's CISO Stories content at CISOstoriespodcast.com. The Cyber Risk Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit CISOstoriesPodcast.com/CRC. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another week's episode of CISO Stories Podcast. We got my girl, Melina Scotto, with us today. Looking good in your blue. How are you doing today?
It's great to be here, Jessica. Thank you so much. I'm doing well.
You're so amazing, everybody. This young lady is one of my favorite mentors. She be doing all the things, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show. I know you're very, very busy, so we will get started. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about cloud security. Oh my goodness, who doesn't have extensive experience in cloud security? I know you have. You've been in the space for how long you been in cyber?
I guess if we go to the way back times, in the late 90s, I was securing Novell networks, the blue screens of Novell. Ooh. So we never called it that back then, but it matured into the firewalls, and we were really thinking of security at the time as being kind of our guns, gates, and guards. And the mantra was, is it public facing? Then I should secure it. Right. And then I think with the advent of the OPM breach, people really started to think about, well, we always have to have port 25 open and 443. And there's can be the lateral movement that goes on, behind the scenes. So we really do need to think about not just what's facing the public, but what we've got kind of going on inside that soft layer of the network. So I guess I've been here from the beginning. I got my first cybersecurity cert in 2010 or 2011, and then I was just a complete addict. That Girl Scout that wanted the next badge. And so then it was the CEH and the CISA, and then on and on. I did get my certified cloud security practitioner in 2017 when ISC Squared began a new program for cloud security. And I've just never looked back. I really enjoy cybersecurity and the daily puzzle that it is, that it's never more than, never the same thing twice.
I love that daily puzzle. I might have to use that. It certainly is a puzzle. It's fun. It's fun to put together too. So I get excited about cyber.
Right. Then once you get to the strategic level, it's just a complete mind game. You have some budget, you have some power to make those changes, just really strengthen the systems. And then the business comes along and says, well, what about us? So we can't just look at cybersecurity, off in this silo like we used to do. We really have to think about how it measures across operations and engineering and the business folks, especially since microservices now defines the customer experience. We have to make sure that that's all secured as well.
Yes, a great segue. And I think we should have a theme on customer service, cybersecurity and customer service, because that's like huge, right?
Absolutely. I think for many years, we were way up here, just kind of nagging at people. You've got this vulnerability,
take your training. They be clicking.
Right.
You have a huge, long-standing background in customer service because past couple positions you've had, literally you were working with people, satisfying clients, exceeding expectations, being a trusted advisor. So one of the things you mentioned about cloud security in our prep is how easy it is, or potentially how easy it is for the adversaries to impact your customer service because of loss of sales, or just bringing down your system obviously is always very important. I think you can agree from executive level. A lot of executives think about money, right? I don't have our program's not up, our system's not up, we're not able to take sales, versus a lot of people that are in the trenches, so to speak, who is actually performing the implementing the controls. They're like more concerned with encryption, right? For
Right.
example, if we're looking at CIA. So tell us a little bit about some of your experiences. Let's start with that, with customer service.
Great example. That would be in the kind of more recent history of how we're seeing cyber criminals attack us. Um, Going a little bit backwards, I'll say first is we would see these fraud based attacks where um, uh, cyber criminals wanted to grab your data and make copies of it, take it away from you, maybe hold it hostage, but often look for ways to defraud the customer or defraud Medicare, Medicaid, or what have you. And I think that from a business perspective, it may have been thought of, well, I'm going to get, a fine for this, but it is part of the cost of doing business, and the business is going to keep rolling on. Then we kind of moved into these crimes of compute, where our adversaries were just trying to jump onto our AWS or Azure or whatever, spin up a whole bunch of servers on our dime or the federal government's dime, and do some Bitcoin mining or grab some money, a quick money grab kind of thing, without the messiness of a ransom, because I'm picking off your compute. I'm picking off kind of your ability to spin up a bunch of servers. And then, maybe you'll catch on and, maybe you won't. But by the time you do, I'm out of there and I've already, you know, um, realized some funds. And then the most recent, it's kind of a scorched earth kind of method, right? Um, let's attack the ability for the customer to engage with the business, to make sales, for instance, or to shut it down. So in the past, maybe we would see the back end shut, where you remember those messages that you would get about, hey, I have your files, I'm encrypting your files, and you can't do work. But that didn't mean necessarily that would hit the bottom line of, a Fortune 500. I might still have work today, or my beautiful schedule might be impacted negatively, but it didn't often hit the price of my stock, or our quarterly financial reports. But if we take an example such as MGM last year, the whole idea was to shut it down so that nobody could make a reservation, right? And nobody could gamble in the organization anymore for
That
10
was huge.
days. So that
Huge.
significantly negatively impacts the bottom line. And that's what we're looking at now. It's getting tougher and tougher to secure all of these cloud-based applications and microservices that we want as soon as possible to get them into production. But along with that comes the knowledge that that is a great avenue for an attacker to come in.
Digital migration to the cloud is essential for businesses to remain competitive, but this shift introduces many new security and operational challenges, especially as the number of clouds and applications increase, rapidly expanding your attack surface for cyber threats to exploit. Organizations need a way to unify these increasingly diverse and vulnerable environments. Fortinet Cloud Security Solutions help you secure your application journeys into, within, and across any cloud. So the ability to scale up, and sometimes without really noticing until you get that bill.
Oh, for a crime of compute, absolutely.
Yeah.
For a crime that shuts down, your 443, your actual websites and services and sales, you'll know it right away. And your customers, when we think about customer service, will be banging on your door saying, I can't make a reservation, or I can't, do the things that I need to do to actually give you money to have that all important transfer between a customer and a business.
Well, some folks might argue that, or cloud does have a lot of extra security features, and we were able to offload some of the responsibility there. Of course, as long as you have that in your contract and you understand where that is. So, why do you think it's a little bit easier, or do you think it's easier? Like what we're seeing now with these crimes, do you think that's something that could have happened if it was like kind of like a brick and mortar data center, data closet within our organization versus the cloud?
I love how you asked that question. It's so thoughtful. It can be, and I think we've seen it mature over time. In the beginning, if you will, everybody wanted to jump in, right? And I
In the
want to be part of
beginning.
the AWS, even if that really wasn't, part of your role, for instance. But everybody wanted to get in and do the latest and greatest things. I think the key to whether you're, running infrastructure as a service or, platform as a service or even software as a service is there's so much flexibility in how many cybersecurity controls you can put on that instance, right? So you'll have more responsibility as the customer developer if you're in an infrastructure as a service than you would as a platform, and then relatively no cybersecurity impact when you are just buying a straight off SaaS. So you have to know where you are in the ecosystem. Am I building servers on something, or am I building containers on servers that already exist? And then what is my role? With these, say we have a FISMA moderate. You and I both worked in both the federal side and the Fortune 500 side. But the controls, whether you're working from NIST or you're working from ISO, are pretty much the same. You mentioned encryption. That's a key control. Encryption is available, of course, AWS and Google and Azure, but have we configured it? Have we configured it correctly? Um, it's just a check mark. Sometimes there's an extra fee that comes with that. Have we built that into our business model for our costs for whatever this latest and greatest thing is that we're building? And then I would say access control has always been an issue. I mentioned everybody wanted to jump in at the beginning of the modernization revolution. I'll say, let's get out of those data centers. Let's put everything into the cloud. We're going to see so much more return on investment, and over time, it's going to be such a value add. But it could come at the cost of reducing your cybersecurity posture if you haven't closed that window and made sure that the people who are accessing it don't have elevated privileges, and have the right amount of maybe two-factor authentication to get in there, just like you already had in the traditional data room database systems and so forth. So those same kind of weak points of encryption, of access management, and actually knowing what people are putting in there. I think data classification has always been something that, whether you're in a traditional data center or in the cloud, has been a challenge for folks. We can't just throw all
What's
of our
what's
sensitive data
data
everywhere.
classification? Who does that? Who does
I
that?
know. I mean, it's not, the saucy side of cyber, and yet it's so very important. It's that basic, hygiene, that if I don't know where my data lives, then I'm not going to be very effective in securing it.
So, yeah, that's what I think. All roads lead to basic cyber hygiene. Literally, like,
Oh,
are your firewall rules configured properly? Do you have multi-factor? Are you scanning for vulnerabilities and compliance? Are you patching?
mm-hmm,
Do you delete
absolutely.
your accounts, or at least disable them when people leave and things like that? So,
Yeah, you bring up a good thing. On
all
the
great points.
accounts, there have been so many attacks on credentials in the past year.
So
And
many.
particularly in cloud space, it's very easy to have a group of usernames that are in your production right? And ideally, you'd have a completely separate group of usernames and uh, passwords and so forth, and multi-factor credentials and everything in your backup space, right? Because the Jessica and Melina cybercrime family is first going to attack
I like
your
that.
your backups, right? And if I've compromised, one credential that works for everything, gosh, you've made our job so much easier. So I think that that's something that folks overlook, because it's so easy to configure those backups using the same accounts if you've got kind of a global access. But we want to be mindful that, to the extent that we can narrow that down, first of all, to a very narrow group of people, but also to somebody completely different in production, just so that your pristine backup area can't be compromised just because your production area was compromised.
So you're doing consulting work now, right?
I am. We just started Masson and Associates this year. It is
Fantastic.
veteran owned. We are a struggling team of two right now, but after years of you and I uh, supporting and advocating for uh, veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, folks with disabilities, I think it was time to step into the fray. I had been a CISO for 6 years or so, both on the federal side and on the Fortune 500 side, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to see what I could do, and kind of put my money where all of my mouth has been all of these years.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
We're
What's the
really
worst that
lucky.
could happen? You'll be great. You'll be great.
I mean, don't
So
talk to the CEO about that.
that's you now. So tell us a little bit about maybe how would you, I'm assuming you're working with clients who would
Mhm.
benefit from your experience. You just mentioned you've been a CISO for quite some time in both public and private industries. So say you have a client that's looking, maybe a small business, medium sized business, looking to get, their organization up and running and obviously do well. What are some of the guidance, points that you express with them or share with them when they're rolling out their strategic plan, especially when they're looking at getting a cloud product, whether it's SaaS or maybe they're doing, all the things in cloud. Like, have you had that yet, or what's just some general stuff? We already talked about good cyber hygiene, but let's talk to our listeners and let them know, give them a little free tidbits here. What would Melina do?
I would start with a strategic plan. You'd be surprised how many folks don't quite have one. So based on their business, and based on how vast their footprint is, I would start there. Let's make sure, and all cybersecurity plans have some basics in them. Should have a reduction of vulnerabilities section. Should also probably have a reduction of footprint section, because we've built these things, particularly in the cloud, um, based on moving and modernizing a bunch of old stuff that maybe we don't need anymore. When we're going through that classification piece, if we haven't yet, um, a very telling statistic is, when was the last time it was touched? Do we really need that if it hasn't been touched
Yes.
in 10 years? Or do we really need it in this space that is in production? Can we offload it into an archive somewhere so that we don't have to pay the big money to make sure that we are auditing and monitoring all of this? And so I think vulnerabilities would be first, reducing that footprint would be second, and making sure that we are monitoring what we are supposed to be. We don't have to have a very fancy, Splunk if we're a small system, very fancy tech stack, but we do need to be watching those logs for indicators of compromise, or we might fall to some pretty easy hacks. And I think that uh, finally, risk communication is something that is one of those things that it is often not really noticed until it's not there, right? So it
Explain,
can't,
explain. Risk
yes, it can't
communication.
just
I
be
like that.
that once a year um, training that people take for awareness, if you will, or that 1 month in October where we're all looking at cybersecurity awareness. I think top cybersecurity teams are always communicating with operations, engineering, the business side. What is coming on? We talk a lot about shifting cybersecurity left. If we don't know what the business is planning, that very cool application or microsystem or whatever is coming our way, then we're almost forced into this game of catch up, where I'm saying, "Hey, this looks new on the network. What is this little thing that we're building? In this, I don't know, dirty little repository or whatever it is that we're building it, right? I don't know." For example, and don't make me break your heart, on the day of production when I say we're going to have to pull this because it's not secured. I can guarantee that your whole build is going to go faster if we put, maybe SCAPs in at the beginning and get you started with a clean and pristine server or container space or whatever, so that we're checking vulnerabilities the whole time. This is done in a very transparent way. And by the time we get to production, we've already remediated all of the vulnerabilities that might keep us from ATO in the federal sense, or a permission to be put into the production.
All that makes too much sense, Melina. Just too much.
I mean, tell no one, but it's not that hard.
It's just I don't know. Wow, perfect world. So what about a client that maybe is brand new and they don't have any prior on prem or legacy, or because I totally agree with you. Vulnerabilities, like one thing I think we learned from CrowdStrike is when our servers were offline, like, do we really need this? Is anybody asking about this, right? And within the government space, that's a big problem with legacy systems,
Mhm.
for many, many reasons. I don't want to get into PTSD right now, but what about a client that you're advising who's brand new to space? So they just want to start their services, their businesses within a cloud. What kind of advice would you start with? A strategic plan first, I'm assuming, and then would it be any different that the how you would
It
guide that
would. It's so
client?
much easier. Well, first I'll start with that. I did have a consultation that went something like this: brand new, state of the art spin off of Johns Hopkins, kind of very biotech thing. We don't have any data yet. We're not ready for cybersecurity. So who would want our, data that is just morphing right now? So they were thinking the old way, like we were talking about, like fraud, right? Um, I said, they don't want that data. You're brand new and you have scads of money, right? you just got, I don't know how many million from a venture capitalist, and wouldn't it be nice to just shut down all of this life-saving work that they're doing and hold it hostage? That's the kind of attacks that we're talking about. So the sooner the better would be would be my mantra. And it's almost easier if we don't have to go in the Wayback Machine and try to make things secure that were built on old legacy, I don't know, Linux, right? or something, right? Because all of our cloud service providers have kind of pre-packaged, pre-secured up to whatever level you need. Boom. So, the problem becomes easy as long as folks don't try to take shortcuts. And by folks, I usually mean developers.
Shout out to
There's long been a
developers.
history of developers in cybersecurity. But, you know, once you demonstrate the path and using the SCAPs that CIS produces and so forth, say, here's your pristine, beautiful environment. These are all of the ways that not only does it help us all secure the business, but it helps your production. It helps your productivity. Turns out that a patched, a newer version of an operating system or a container, what have you, actually performs better.
You don't say. Oh, this is so. Learned
I
so
know,
much.
I know, I'm talking
Yes,
crazy. You know, and so I think starting fresh is a lot easier than
for sure.
folks who are literally carrying their babies. I built this server. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of my
Your
residency
baby's
or whatever the
ugly.
case may be, right? And
Yes.
it's wrapped up in their identity, and so forth. So much so that when some of my researchers were finding out that I was checking on the last touch of these files so that I could reduce the footprint by maybe 15%, which is a super modest, I thought, reduction. They started touching them just because, just so there would be kind of a
Mm-hmm.
new hit on that machine. Not that they needed it in the past 5 years, so we had to get a bit creative about
That's
that.
funny.
And the thing is, if it is truly the history of your innovation or something, then we have to pay to get it secure. We can't
Mm-hmm.
just keep it in perpetuity unsecure out there, not just for your research, but it could be a pivot point to attack other people's research. So,
Absolutely. And that's where it's so important to communicate that because people who are not, they might be techie, but not like cyber aware of how that might not seem like a big deal. And that's what I talk to my students about. Like, you might not think you're important, or I tell people this new hire ever, you might not think you're exciting, Melina, but that doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer. Maybe your neighbor is like a nuclear physicist with the cure for, I don't know, cancers or something. I don't know.
mhm,
Or not that that
mhm,
would be nuclear. I don't know. But yes, it's all important. I love how you said the old way versus the new way. I mean, it's not necessarily old, but like maybe traditional, I guess. But like
mhm.
now it's like, yeah, the ransoms, the hijacking of computing power for Bitcoin mining. When we were talking the other day, I was like, it was like so on point with me because I was just looking at my MacBook like, this is slow as hell. Why is this so slow? Is somebody mining my computing power? And like, people
Sure.
don't really, I don't know if a lot of people even know about that kind of hack. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they just think it's old tech. I'm pretty sure it's just because my MacBook is old, but like, I definitely was like, oh my gosh, let me look at all the processes that's going on in the background. I just feel like some people aren't necessarily aware of all the ways that they could be hacked. It's not just about your data being precious.
Mhm.
Like you said, they could with the ransomware, for instance, right? That would stop all sales. That would
Yeah.
stop your revenue flow. That would stop your ability to provide services, especially if they're critical services. Like you said, you've been in healthcare, you've been in hotel industry. You've been in a lot of different industries where there's no downtime. Like,
Yeah.
there's no excuses. We've
That's
got to
right.
perform. We've got to provide these services to our clients.
That's it. That's it. And really keeping that conversation open, like you mentioned, so that we are communicating all the way up to the board level that cyber risk is business risk. And I've seen a real shift in the past couple of years, particularly with the new SEC language that I think boardrooms are interested, are getting it. And so we really need to polish our skills in talking up. We've always, I think, spoken to the masses, if you will. But I think the trick is speaking to other VPs in the developer arena, in the engineering arena, and moving from that cyber is a nag, to
The no
actually
police.
cyber can be a
Yes.
partner in your innovation.
Yes.
Just just
Absolutely.
just let us in.
We want to help
uh,
sales. We're here to help you be successful,
mhm,
period.
mhm,
Right.
right.
That's that risk communication you were mentioning.
And that tech stack that we're using for monitoring and auditing, because we have to, right? In many cases, we're obliged to by the regulations, but it can also give you a real beautiful view of your performance and what's going on and where your microservices are being used, or where you can maybe tighten up some of your applications and your language and your code and so forth.
I love it. Sorry, my dog's prancing around. We're coming on time here. So tell everybody where we can find you, Melina Scotto.
I am at, Melina Scotto at gmail.com. Masson Associates is just starting our first scope of work with the federal government, and we are just so thrilled. I'm also doing advisory work for Leak Signal and a few other organizations. So, I'd be happy to talk to you about cybersecurity anytime.
Yes, and I don't normally plug anybody, but I will plug this woman right here. She knows what she's talking about. She is amazing to work with. Budding ray of sunshine. Look at that. See? Hearts. Oh, I'm so happy that you came on the show. I'm just a huge fan,
My
and I
pleasure.
love
And
all of this for you.
congratulations. I'm so happy to see you here and hear your voice. It's so
Thank
important.
you. Thank you. Yes, we got to represent. Like you said, you've been on the one side for a while. Now you're out in the streets with your women owned, veteran owned small business. You're making a difference in the cyber community, getting excited about it, giving back, paying it forward, all the wonderful experiences that you've had and the people that you met. Really, really appreciate you. And I had Lalisha on too. So, like, this is, you two are my favorite people. So, it's
She
full
is
circle
the
now. I
best.
can retire. Mic drop. I'm done.
She is the
Um,
best. No way. No way. You're needed. You're needed.
I love, yes, thank you. You're so sweet. Well, okay, one last question. This is
Yes.
this is my guest question. Tell me what would Melina Scotto, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
You're not the best singer.
Oh. You sing or
I never
you
told
don't
you
sing?
this. I'm a failed opera singer, and IT
Oh.
was my backup plan back in the 90s.
So you would just skipped?
I would have taken more programming courses. Probably. I mean, I love singing still, but at the time you had to be the top, 1% to really make a living at it, and so IT always paid for lessons, and who knew it would be my career? I didn't know that at 18.
Yeah. It sneaks up on you. Before you know it, you're just deep in the IT and you're like, what happened? How did I get to be an auditor? That's pretty much how I start my days. How did I get here? I did not know you were an opera singer. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
next time we're together, you're gonna have to perform Ugly Sweater Party next Thursday.
Yes, I will do that.
Let's go. Let's go.
Give a soprano on mic.
I'm telling everybody, so you can,
I'll
you
be
can't
ready.
back out. You
I'll
can't
bring
back
my
out.
repertoire.
That's right. Oh my goodness,
Best
this
stuff.
has been amazing. I feel like I could keep talking to you because you mentioned some stuff. Just about the seat at the table with the CISOs now, how important that is. And I mean, there's just a lot of discussions about who the CISO should be reporting to and all those things. I know we're getting off a cloud security topic, but I really enjoyed speaking with you. You've always been so clutch with advice, especially at a leadership level and as a woman in cybersecurity, boss lady. Really, really appreciate everything you've been doing in our community and continue to do. And thank you so much again for being on the show.
It was my pleasure.
Okay. Well, thank you. Until next time, everybody. Bye. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories podcast. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsor, Fortinet. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast, and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode.